All right, y'all, welcome to the Lone Star Plate. I'm your host, Patrick Scott Armstrong. What do you say we jump into this? Our guest today is James Fox. He's a director and executive producer of a new film out called A Moment of Contact. You might have heard of his last film, The Phenomenon, probably the best documentary on the UAP UFO topic I've ever seen. Very compelling. And this new one, he upped his game. It's absolutely wonderful and compelling. Watch the film first. It comes out today, October 18th. So go watch it and then come back and watch this interview with James Fox. It's unlike any of the other interviews he's going to do about this film. Okay, I promise you. It's not like the other ones. So watch this one. Spread it, like it, hit the subscribe buttons for more, okay? You're going to want to see this episode. And please feel free to check out part 1, 2, and 3 of our UFO series, In UFOs We Trust, We've got some great videos on our YouTube channel. Those we'll put a link in the description and in the comments for that. But this film is absolutely amazing. A Moment of Contact. My gosh, our conversation was even better. So without further ado, let's jump into this interview with director James Fox. I'm so excited to share this with y'all. So please let us know in the comments what you think. If you have any other questions for James, we could probably get him on again later on and have a more in-depth conversation that's not just about this latest documentary. Now, we'll say we discuss some other topics in there. It's a well-rounded interview. So please sit back and enjoy and let us know what you think.
Sorry if it looks like I'm in a hotel room because guess what?
You are.
I'm in a hotel room.
Yeah. I love it. Hey, you're a traveling man. You got things to do. You're busy. That's a good sign.
Yesterday,
you're on the run, right? Who's chasing you? Men in Black? Is that what's going on, James?
Keeping it moving. Keeping it moving.
Never in one place for one night.
Yeah, keep it moving. Keep them off the trail.
Keep them off the trail, man. Listen, after this latest this film you have, I see why.
It was the scariest production I've ever done, and not just what was on camera, but things that were happening off camera as well.
I can imagine. Is that one of the most, I guess, sort of remote, sort of out there places that you filmed?
No, I've filmed all over. I've been to Australia, Africa, China, but I've never been threatened to be shot in the face, like on any production I've ever done, and by someone who was very serious.
Sure, absolutely.
And I had been told that witness was nearly impossible to track down, and even the family of the people. We can get into it later, but the family of the passenger that was with him, he won't even talk to them. And he gets really nervous. So somebody got to him and put the kibosh down. He'd been hiding, and I could see it in his face when I saw him. You don't really pick that up as much in the camera, but I was looking him in the eyes, and I thought to myself, well, this guy has been harboring something very significant for a long time. Crazy.
I do want to get into that.
Sorry, I'm
getting. No, but trust me, because I have a question about what he was holding in his hand.
You're not alone.
We
were all speculating.
Yeah, that was my first. I was like, let me zoom in on this. What is going on here?
Yeah,
this looks crazy. No, yes, for sure. Again, this was such a. I got to say, the way you built up the film as I'm watching, like the way it builds up, it just grows. The tension builds and builds and builds and builds. It's just so good, man. It's so revealing. So yes, congratulations on another wonderful film. Shout out to the last one, The Phenomenon. Also amazing. Absolutely loved it. Huge fan. That was my first film to see of yours. And man, I just can't wait to see what else you got coming out. Unbelievable.
I'm going to start shooting my next film in November.
Dude, I love that. Look at that. Listen,
that
makes people happy. That just makes people happy, man. I mean, you know, maybe not, being at home for you, but for the rest of us, we get to enjoy your fruits. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Let's jump into this. This film is about specifically, sort of like Brazil encounters, but specifically one in 1996 in am I saying this
Varginha.
right? Varginha, right? Which is just like Virginia. Is it the same?
Varginha.
Word? Yeah, Varginha. But does it mean Virginia in English?
God,
like from the state,
sure.
Virginia?
How do you spell Virginia? It's a very good question. I've never been asked that. I don't know.
I think it comes from that. I speak Spanish, like my,
Oh, okay.
You say Varginha in Spanish, right? So, and a lot of like Portuguese, Brasileño is not all the way, but I can understand like 20%, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's the same word anyway.
Yeah, no, you might be yeah, you're onto something there.
So anyway, I thought that was interesting, but so it's specifically sort of about. And I never heard about this. That's what I found most. I never heard about this, so I was completely
It's
blank on the
crazy.
subject going into this. Right, I didn't know any. I had no preconceived notions or things I'd seen. And yes, even goes so far as to like they captured some beings or something like reportedly. This takes like a whole turn right in this documentary. Can you give us just like a brief overview of maybe just the initial encounter in 1996, just so we can like wrap our heads around or get a foundation
Absolutely.
here?
So I have to start off by saying that I don't expect your audience to believe anything I'm about to say. Because if I were you, I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
I think that's the first time anyone started a podcast like that with me. I love it. I love it.
Because I didn't. It took me 10 or 12 years just to look into it. In 1996, January, I think it was like the evening of the 12th, January 12th, or early in the morning on the 13th, there were a number of people who witnessed an object that looked like a cigar-shaped object, and it had a gash in the side of it. It looked like it was in trouble. It didn't make any noise. It was flying very, very slowly. No wings, no tail, no visible means of propulsion. It had like a vapor coming out the side and a gash in it, according to the witnesses. Let's see, the morning of the 13th, probably around 5 a.m., a gentleman by the name Carlos de Souza, he was a pilot on those little ultralight airplanes, and he was driving up into the state of Minas Gerais, which is to the north of Sao Paulo by about 4 or 5 hours. And he was going to go meet some friends, and he was just outside of a town called Varginha. And he sees this object over him on the he was on the freeway up over a hill off to the one side, and he's thinking, "My God, that thing's in trouble." What that? Never once did it dawn on him that it was of, other origin. Right? He just thought maybe military plane or something special operation. He didn't know, but he saw it go down, and he was like, "That thing just crashed." So he turned off the freeway and he went up to investigate. And he arrived. I don't know how much detail you want me to go in, but basically he arrives on a field of metallic foil-like material, and then a large part of the object still intact. And he picked up some of this paper, and he said the smell was so putrid. It was ammonia and sulfur so bad that he had to get his shirt and put it over his mouth. Wow. And his eyes were watering, and he picked up a piece of this material, and he said you couldn't really feel it in your hands. He said it was light as foil, but just didn't weigh anything. And he crumpled one piece of it up. I think it's about that big, and it just regained on its own. And as that was happening, he still wasn't thinking extraterrestrial.
Why would you?
Why would you? And then the military arrived coming from the opposite direction from a military base called Eza military base. And that was the center of operations. They came, they threatened him, they pointed a gun at him. You didn't see what you saw, get out of here. He thought, well, that was all. He frighteningly gets into a car, off he goes. 7 days later, in the town of Varginha, which is roughly 12 to 15 miles away, people, both military and civilian, witnessed these strange beings that they thought maybe were the devil. They didn't know what these creatures were, but they were feeble. They were scared. They were cowering. They were not doing well. They had oily blue skin, big red eyes, spindly arms and legs, weak. They were not threatening at all. I interviewed 3 young women from 14 to 21, Katya and Valkyria and Liliani. 2 of them were sisters, and they came within 8 to 10 feet of this creature in broad daylight. We went to the site, but there were lots of other operations. Military cordoned off the town, and there were and these beings were captured and
separately, right? Like separately.
Yeah, they were captured separately. Yeah, I think one was shot and the other one was just captured. We can go into that if
Yeah. No,
I
no,
know.
for sure. I mean, really, I just want to go however far you want into that
Oh,
kind of
I'm
stuff.
happy to go further.
Yeah, yeah.
So there were for the first time, and I'm told this by Brazilian researchers, and I went to Brazil for a month, 4 times in investigating this case,
Wow.
um, over a 12-year period. And quite honestly, when I'd heard about this case, probably for the first time in the late 90s, from a co-producer of a film I did called Out of the Blue, this guy Tim Coleman, he
Yep.
told me, and I just thought to myself, Tim, seriously, a UFO crashes and you got these live beings walking around the town. I was like, come on, man. And I just refused to even look into it because I just thought this so
It
unlikely.
does sound. It sounds right. It sounds surreal. It just.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I'm
Yeah.
telling your audience, don't believe anything I'm saying.
Yeah.
I really mean that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you hear the testimony, when you go there and you hear the reports from these witnesses, both military, civilian, firemen, local media, pretty compelling.
I agree. I concur, man.
Pretty damn compelling.
It's just a lot of. My first thought of all of that is thinking, okay, that's just a lot to coordinate all of them together. Let's lie on this together. We don't even know each
No.
other. Why are we going to all lie? You know what I mean?
People have no idea. Not one witness, not one wasn't a fight to get to go on camera. And some of them, we spent the better part of 10 years. Carlos de Souza, who watched it crash, he gave one statement briefly to a UFO researcher in 1996 and then vanished for 26 years. And my partner, Marco Leal, who's been my boots on the ground, and a couple of other fellow Brazilian researchers found him and managed over time to slowly get him to convince him to come forward again after 26 years. Other witnesses,
Wow.
like the doctors, they'd never gone on camera before. We
Yeah.
found them. Marco had found them and spent 7, 8, 9 years trying to get them to come forward. The military guy who allegedly drove one of those creatures around, Military X, that guy said he's never going to come forward.
That was the craziest interview. That one right there was just like, wow.
We had a window in time, a sliver about that wide, barely opening. And I looked over and we were in Varginha and he was way to the north. And I said, just meet me. Let me look you in the eyes and let's look each other in the eyes, kind of thing. And he agreed to do that. And so we jumped in the car at night and drove up there. And long story short, we got him to come forward. And he's been the most sought after witness. And he was never going to come ever. He was going to take it to his grave. And the fact that
It's powerful. His testimony is powerful. Absolutely. Especially y'all taking him to the site and the emotional response. Oh, so incredible. So genuine and emotional. And emotional, the camera pans to you and you're getting emotional. Like I'm getting emotional. I'm watching the thing. I'm like, Jesus, this. It must be a crazy memory for him.
Oh my gosh. Right? Could you imagine?
Yeah. Just a flood of emotion and memories being there too. Having a hard time finding it and almost giving up for a split second. There's this moment where it's just like almost giving up and then you just kept pushing. You know what? Let's just go down this hill. Let's keep. I'm so glad you did that.
Well, it's really funny actually because I'm extremely tenacious. They say that there's only like 3 things in life that you really need. I had this famous film editor one time. He'd won awards, Oscars. Walter Murch. He worked on English Patient, Apocalypse Now. He was a neighbor of mine, lived up the street. And he said, James, think of life as sitting on a 3-legged stool on the bow of a ship in rough seas. One leg represents tenacity, one leg represents talent, and one leg represents luck. He said, very, very, very rarely in life will you have all 3 of those planted on the deck of that ship. You're usually relying on just one, right? So whether it's tenacity or luck or talent, and every now and again in life, all 3 of those. And I thought, wow, so if I lack the talent, I can, if I'm tenacious enough, you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Sometimes you learn things. And I always think about that. But, I was out there thinking, we're going to find this spot. Like, just not finding this spot is just not, even,
Yeah,
not
we're out
even
here.
enough
We
to-
got the guy, right? Like we are not
gonna
leaving.
find this
Yeah.
spot. And I remember kept saying, how sure are you that you could see this small white house? And he kept
Sure.
saying, 1,000% sure. I know I could see the wall, but the trees had grown up in that part of the field, so you couldn't see that white house. So I started to get the drone out and do mapping from overhead, which was a very helpful tool.
Oh, I bet.
That's when I spotted the white little house. I was like, okay, I think we found the spot. And then, he ran down there. And of course, once he found the spot, you could see
You could see him building the whole like memory out right there. Like, you know what I mean?
Totally. You could see
what I mean?
Yeah. The seeing it all play in his head, in his eyes. In fact, our photographer, our lead photographer, my DP is a guy named David West. He's a seasoned videographer. He's done stuff at the White House, National Geographic. He said that was one of the top 3 moments of his career.
Wow.
Tell me that scene, just because he's like actors can cry out of one eye. This guy was crying out of both eyes.
Yeah, that's
you
hilarious.
Could see it in his face.
It was that scene was so powerful for sure. It almost
none of these witnesses, none of them
Yeah.
came looking for us. We had to hunt them down and beg and plead them to come forward and share what they knew, because everyone's got a little piece of the puzzle. Very few people know the whole picture, right? You have to put them all together.
That's a good point.
Crazy. And then we find out that the Americans are involved.
Yeah, that bit about the Air Force plane, right, coming down. I think maybe the connection with the material, right? The first thing I hear the foil-like material, I think Roswell.
Yeah, of course.
Right, the same sort of, right? I mean, who didn't think, if you're watching that, that's what I thought. I thought, well, yeah, that makes total sense that they would come. Or does it make sense? I don't know. It's at this point, to be honest.
Every person I met with, both the civilian and the military, I wanted to know, like, where did this stuff go?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
So I asked everybody that question, and everybody immediately responded the Americans were involved. But then when we got the radar guy, control tower, talks about the plane that came in on the 22nd of January. We know where that stuff was on the 22nd of January because we got the guy who drove it there, right? In Campinas. It's where all the intellectual heavyweights are in the country of Brazil. They have Campinas. It's like a university. It's like all the scientists. It's like the center. And they took it there, and I guess they studied it for a couple of days, and then a United States Air Force plane flew in and into Campinas on the 22nd, exactly when it was there, and then did what they're going to do. Some helicopters flew into the town of Varginha, and then back to the United States.
And now there's no idea of like exactly what they took, right? Whether it be recovered crash material and being, or one or the other, or
we don't know.
Witnesses along with it, like disappearing them to, right?
We don't know.
Wow.
I'd like to know, and believe me, I'm gonna. There are other aspects. When did you watch the movie?
Last night.
Okay, so do you remember the end?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like what we wrote at the end. It's kind of significant, but
sure.
I was very carefully trying to figure out how I could state that aspect of this case without jeopardizing our initiative. In other words, there were cameras in 1996. There were video cameras in 1996. Therefore,
there's stuff there. Yeah.
Yes. So,
now, are you sure that there's stuff there, or are you just like,
I'm
think
not positive
that there's stuff there?
No,
okay,
no, I'm 100%
you're positive there's stuff. You just got to find it.
Well,
find it and get it.
Let's put it this way. Even if you, even if you
convince the person to turn it over.
I just had a mango. Yeah, I just had a mango smoothie. Even if you find something, hypothetically, now what? You have to talk that person into giving it to you, right?
Sure. That's probably the tougher battle.
Think about that transaction. How does that go down?
Sure.
You offer they're terrified. Witnesses are terrified. People's lives have been threatened. They'll tell you on camera. They all did, while we were there filming, we had meetings with people that were directly involved with the incident, and we either had meetings scheduled the following day, or we had just met with someone. And the next day, the local military base, as it was calling those witnesses, oh, we understand. Oh, how you doing? Yeah, you still living at the same address? And your family's doing well? Good, good. Yeah, we heard there's an American documentary film crew in town, and have you talked to them? Have you met with them? Did they reach out to you? Well, we really hope your family. Yeah, no, I'm not kidding you. I was getting spooked, and so and that's just testimony. Now imagine if you have a piece of evidence. Just think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Think of the lengths they're going to go to. Think of the lengths the Americans are going to go to make damn sure that piece doesn't get out. These people are terrified. I'm telling you, they're terrified. But I guess where I'm getting at is this film coming out. My hope is that it will encourage others, both in America and in Brazil, to come clean on this case. And I'm convinced that will happen. In other words, this film is just to be the catalyst for more transparency, for more people to come forward.
It's a recruiting tool, if you will.
Thank you. Yeah. And open it up. I mean, and so I'm very excited about it. I mean, did I want to hang on and wait to release the film till we had that definitive piece of evidence? Sure, I kind of did, but then I thought it's not about me or my film. It's about the case. Getting the case out there, as far as I'm concerned, is far more important. And I think the case that we make in a court of law would probably sway any jury that this case happened.
I mean, if you were trying to replace that with another scenario, right, that was most people believed it, you're right. There's enough evidence to say this happened, right? Like, I'm with you there. Yeah. That's actually a great point. A question I had watching this was, as time goes by, evidence deteriorates, right? They say that. But witnesses and things like that, they typically tend to open up after a longer period of time, after a traumatic event. So there's sort of a pro and con of coming back and looking at something that happened, right, back in the day. Do you think you could have made this film before? I guess you said you've been trying to make it for 10 years. Is this something that could have been made right after it? Or
No.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
No.
Needed time.
And the doctor who performed, the x-ray technician who did the x-rays reportedly of this creature, first he said no for 7 years because we found him. Marco Leal, my partner, found him and went to the hospital time and time again. No, I'm never going to talk. He finally went on the record, provided we shot him from the back, disguised his voice. And at the end of it, he said, "Thank you for giving me that opportunity. I've been shouldering this burden for 26 years. Thank you." Like, I feel like that a weight lifted off of them. And they all said that to me. Thank you for providing this opportunity, because I've been shouldering this burden for 26 years. And could you imagine, just put yourself in their shoes for a moment. Imagine if you had that experience. Imagine if you'd driven this ET around, just whether you believe it or not. Imagine keeping that from the rest of the world. That's the most significant event in modern history. I mean, in fact, I can't think of anything more significant. Can you?
No, I can't. No, absolutely.
So imagine how we would feel keeping that from the world.
Absolutely. That actually is a question I have later on down here at the end, but I'll ask it now. We're kind of here. You pivoted there. I was going to ask you if you ever saw, like, your advice to people if they ever saw a UFO, and what would you do if you saw a UFO? Would you approach it as your advice to, like, approach these things, try to interact with them? And would you tell somebody?
Yeah. So, the climate has changed since 2017. The New York Times published that former secret Pentagon UFO program, ATIP.
Yeah.
Things definitely changed. There have been people in the intelligence coming forward, people that were involved in the program coming forward, former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid coming forward saying, look, there's more to this than swamp gas and weather balloons. And the vast majority of significant evidence has not been released to the public. And that we don't think it's Russians. We don't think it's Chinese, and it's definitely not us. Those are some pretty powerful statements coming at very high levels. And you can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? But so what's what I try to get back to my point that I was trying to make. I think
approach the UFOs.
Yeah,
No,
well, yeah. I think you can now talk more seriously about an encounter.
I don't mean talk about. I mean, like, if you saw UFO, do you recommend like actually approaching an actual UFO? I mean, like,
well, from what I understand,
like
from everyone that I've ever spoken to, within a certain proximity of the power source, that there's radiation, and
so don't get near it.
My understanding, I'm just explaining from what I've heard.
Yeah, of course.
Is that there is radiation, something to do with the power source. But I've talked to people that have gotten within 10 feet. I mean, there was a landing, and if you remember a case I covered in The Phenomenon, it was a landing that happened at a school outside Melbourne. It's called the Westall UFO incident. It happened in 1966, and there were 360 plus witnesses that saw this UFO darting around in the sky above the school, and then it landed on an adjacent forest, like right over to the edge of the playground. And a handful of the kids jumped the fence against the will of the teachers, and they got within, I don't know, 10 feet as it was sitting on the ground. And I interviewed them, and it's so rare to get the opportunity to speak to someone who's come within 10 feet of a UFO, landed on the ground in broad daylight, that you actually believe, right?
Sure.
But they said it made very little to no noise, little like a humming or a buzzing. And then it came up off the ground, I think about 15 or 20 feet, and then it pitched up to the side and then shot off like it was shot out of a gun, out of the barrel, came like a bullet coming out of the barrel of a gun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And but yeah,
getting back to your, I'm scared to get near them. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you know who else came kind of close to one, which is kind of fun, is that police officer, Lonnie Zamora, who saw that egg-shaped craft, which I keep thinking about the Tic Tac, that infamous Tic Tac that they talked about.
Yes, you're right.
That's written in the news everywhere with David Fravor, the pilot. But this was 1964 in Socorro, New Mexico, and he was walking up to it when it took off. I think he got within 35 feet of it. But he was terrified of the propulsion and this blue, anyway.
Of course, I would just be absolutely terrified. I personally don't recommend it to people. I say get out your camera,
yes,
and take video footage, right? Like, don't get all Goonies on us. Just get the footage and send it to James Fox, right?
Somebody, Joe Rogan just posted something of a guy that had an encounter with a mountain lion out in the middle of nowhere, and this mountain lion was kind of come after him, and he was filming the whole thing. And Joe said, I don't know about you, but I would definitely have put my camera down, but this guy had his camera out and he's filming as this thing's coming at him. I'm like, oh my God.
That's kind of a good point. That's kind of a good point. Yeah. I mean, if the UFO's rushing at me, yes, I'm dropping the camera at that point. It's gone.
It's unbelievable how many witnesses I've interviewed that said the last thing on their mind was getting their camera out. They were so.
I can kind of see that though too. You're just mesmerized.
Which doesn't make any sense, right? When you're talking about it, you're thinking, who wouldn't? That's the first thing you do is grab your camera. People are just like,
I don't know. I've been in some pretty like crazy situations where I didn't grab my camera out. So I like think about your most whatever moments in life. You probably don't have them on film or a picture of it. It happens. You're in it. An argument or something emotional. I don't know. I can believe that, to be honest with you. That's like Neil deGrasse Tyson's almost famous for saying, like, why don't they just pull out a camera grab an ashtray off the UFO? Okay, are we being serious here? Like, come on now. Well, this is crazy.
So we do know that there have been very good photographs and video footage taken by the military, and it's been confirmed. I've interviewed the people that had it in their possession and then handed it over to the government. course, never to
Oh,
be seen or
wow.
heard from again. I had Senator
course.
Harry Reid confirm. They have film footage of a landed UFO circa 1957 at Edwards Air Force Base. Mercury astronaut Gordon Cooper went on camera and told me about it.
Wow.
Yeah, she saw the film. He didn't roll it, but he held it up and he saw a landed disc on the
Is
desert.
that the one that came down where they were shooting something like a commercial or something?
Yes, they were shooting. So sorry. They were shooting the installation of F-86 fighter jet, like landing installation and landing and takeoff spot. And this thing came in and landed, and they turned their cameras on it.
I heard about that.
Yeah, Gordon Cooper got the film processed, and then he said he held it up to the light and he looked at it, and it was a good film of a disc. And he got the higher up in Washington, D.C. And finally a courier jet came in from D.C., took the film footage and never seen or heard from ever again. And I asked him, did you follow up on it? And he's like, well, how, it's classified, taken.
Yeah.
Nothing to follow up. I followed orders. I did it. That footage gone. Yeah. There are a handful of those cases from very credible sources that I've interviewed. So we know that there is good footage, that needs to come out. Even the Tic Tac videotape, you see, the Tic Tac shoot off to one side. Your audience has been following the UFO phenomenon, that ATIP program on the cover of the New York Times 2017.
We have we actually have Lou Elizondo coming on as soon as his book comes out.
Oh, good.
Work that out with his people.
Yeah, we'll talk to him about it, because I've heard from him and others within that program that what was released, and it wasn't really released. Quite honestly, they found a loophole and snuck that stuff out of the Pentagon.
That's kind of what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's funny because when my film came out, the New York Times people called me up and they said, wait a minute, did Christopher? He said it very craftily. He said something like, we found a loophole and but they found a loophole. I mean, if they'd asked, hey, we want to release these UFO videos, that would have never happened. They found a loophole.
They did it.
And walked those into the Pentagon. But apparently, according to people that were part of that program, you can see other videos that are not been released that are longer, and that these objects perform, like shoot off at 90-degree angle turns and things of that nature, that immediately eliminates the possibility of anything conventional. But those have not been released yet.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't even know if we're ready for this stuff to be released in a way. I don't know. Are we really ready? I know we think we're ready, but are we really ready to even imagining and thinking, okay, the universe is huge. There has to be life out there. If that's what you think these things are, if they're not other dimensions or other time or whatever, right? That's one thing to think, but another thing is to know for certain it's true, right? So are we really ready for that disclosure?
I've said this before in interviews, and I'll stick to it because it makes the most sense to me, and it's been shared with me from pretty high level people. They say, if we come out with what we know, we also have to come out with what we don't know. So you expose your vulnerabilities, not just in a way of protecting, like, because they don't look at it as in this philosophical, wow, sure, we're not alone in the universe, and what a mind expanding epiphany that would be.
Yeah.
That's not, for them, it's like, wait a minute, suddenly we've got other life forms, an intelligence that is all around us, that has the ability to manifest itself in a multitude of ways. It's nuts and bolts, but it's also psychic. We don't know who they are, where they come from, what they want. They fly rings around our fastest jets. Thank you and good night. Do you see their point? So there are people within the government, I'm told, that do want this out, that people are entitled to this information, whether it's a little scary or not, and that everyone should know it's just part of the bigger universe. It's just part of our story, our history, our reality. But there are others that are reluctant to do so because of potential panic. Look, I'm not telling you I believe this, but they say that, the impact on religion, the impact politically, it's just going to have on the economy. I spoke to Robert Bigelow, Bigelow Aerospace.
Bass, right?
Yes, exactly. And he was the one given the government contract for ATIP and what preceded OSAP and all that.
OSAP, yeah.
You know, and if you look up his name, you'll see that the government has been kind of pushing UFO cases in his direction for decades. And I don't know exactly why, but he's a billionaire. He's had think tanks, NIDS, where he's had the intellectual heavyweights in the world, in the scientific community, trying to figure this stuff out. And I did a film called I Know What I Saw back in 2009. I finished it, and it came out on the History Channel, and it's a good little piece of work. And I got a message from his office, and it was actually from his secretary, just saying, "Hey, Mr. Bigelow wants to congratulate you on a job well done. He really enjoyed your movie." I thought, "Oh, that's cool. Hey, love to meet him." You know, I wrote back, and yeah, he'll get together with you for lunch. So we did. I got together. I met him in at his home in Las Vegas, and you know, whether you like Bigelow or not, or respect him or whatever, the guy's certainly in a position to know a lot more than the average Joe. That's for sure. That's
Sure.
no question.
Yeah.
And he said to me, the impact that they have determined that the impact this reality would have on society would be tremendous. And not in a good way. He felt like the economy would collapse, religions would collapse. I'm just telling you what he told me. I'm not saying I
Sure.
believe it or I don't believe it.
Sure.
That's what he said to me. So if that's the case and they really believe that,
They're
I'll
going to
give you
hold
another
back at
example.
no cost, right? At all costs, they'll hold back if they really believe it.
When in the Varginha case, the three girls came within 10 feet of this creature in broad daylight in this like little field next to a cinder block wall in the town of Varginha. That was at around 3:00 in the afternoon. At around 5 p.m., 2 hours later, just a few blocks away, there were two military men on patrol. I'll get to the relevance in a second. Eric Lopes and Marco Chuisi. And they were told to look out, be on the lookout for something incredibly unusual, something like that. Not like a UFO crashed or not that there's ET, none of that, just unusual. They're driving 5:30 at night. The creature that the girls had seen goes across the road in front of them, screeched the car to a stop. Eric Lopes is driving. Marco jumps out the passenger seat, and he grabs this creature with his bare hands. Didn't put up much of a fight, very feeble, puts it in the back of the car. Off they go. And in fact, I think it was even on his lap. And they take it to one clinic. The doctor says, "What is that thing? Get it out of here." So they take it to another place, hospital. It ultimately ended up at Hospital Humanitas, but it might have gone to a place regional just prior to that. But in any case, probably like, and he had this, Marco had this oil all over his body from coming in contact with this thing. And he said he got rubbing alcohol, and he was putting rubbing alcohol, according to his family, putting rubbing alcohol. And he had a cut on, I think, a shoulder right here from the probably from the incident. And he, within, I think maybe 2 weeks, he admitted himself to the hospital. And we interviewed his doctor that worked on him. It's also in the movie. And he got an infection. He was 23 years old, perfectly healthy. The doctor said he was throwing the book at him, the kitchen sink, everything, every type of antibiotic, nothing. He said never in his career prior and never in his career after has he ever seen anything like it. His immune system shut down, and he died. Family obviously was devastated. They put him in the ground immediately. They wanted him in the ground as soon as possible, for you could figure that why. And eventually the military came to Marco Chuisi's mother. And I know this because I interviewed the sister. And they said, "What happened is true. Your son did handle that creature, but the story can never come out because the society would collapse." And that's what they told the mother. And that's what the sister relayed, his sister, Marta, relayed to us on camera. And so that's what they believed in 1996. That's what apparently Bigelow believes today.
Well, sure.
Yeah. Do I believe that? From what I know, I don't. I think it's a little scary. You know, the unknown. It's a little scary, but hey, man, it's a big universe. And there's a lot out there, I'm sure. And there's so many now they're talking about multiverses and different dimensions, and it could be interdimensional. I mean, my God, we've only got 6 senses. Maybe it's all around us and we just can't detect it. And it just comes into a certain frequency, and that's how we see it. Maybe, I don't know. Could be interplanetary, could be time travelers, it could be interdimensional, it could be all of the above, right? I don't know. Yep. I don't know, because people say to me, the distances are so vast, how on earth? I don't know. How am I supposed to know? Well, I'm just the reporter here.
Listen,
I don't have the answers.
I backpacked Spain one time. I did something called El Camino de Santiago, where you walk all of Spain, right?
I've heard about this.
And so at the very end, they have something called Finisterra, and that means end of the earth, right? And so because back in the day, that's what they thought the end of the earth was at that particular spot in Spain, right? So you walk up to the ocean, they would walk up, that's it. There's no more. If you go out there, Manuel, if you leave on that boat, bro, you ain't never coming back. Right, it's the same sort of scenario. I really believe that to sort of get over that thinking, right, of that. But really back to that point, I honestly think if the world were to find out that this is, they're alien, they're from another planet, whatever dimension, I honestly think people would go, oh, cool. Hey, where are we going for dinner? I really think it would just be literally Tuesday new and move on from it. I really think the humanity is that kind of like narcissistic and okay, cool. That is cool, but hey, we still got shit to do. I really believe that.
You're reminding me. I was interviewing this family. It was in Arizona, and it was they call it the Phoneix Lights Incident.
Yeah.
But if you call it to the Phoneix Lights Incident to the witnesses, they get pissed off, saying, no, it was the massive UFO flyover. It wasn't light.
Okay.
Big crap. I'm interviewing this family, and there were a group of like 10 women, part of hospice. And they were just having tea in this woman's garden. And it was March 13th, 1997, about 7:30, 8 o'clock p.m. In a rural area of Phoenix. They're having tea. And they said that this object was like a floating city. And I'll get to the relevance of this in a second. And it floated very slowly over the top of them while they're having tea. They looked up at it all together in unison, watched it. It took about 5 or 10 minutes to pass over the head. And then they went right back to having tea and didn't say a word. And I looked at them and I said, you guys didn't think about grabbing a camera and chasing it? No. What do you mean, no? How could you possibly not have done that? You didn't talk about it? No. You didn't make a phone call? No. It was so hard for them to process what they were looking at that they just put it right out of their mind. It was like it went right back to having tea. Yeah. And I always remember that testimony. Wow. They couldn't wrap obviously, right?
Yes.
They couldn't wrap their mind around it.
No reference. Right.
Yeah, there were no reference. There's no place for that. There's no cubby hole for that one.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's America. They're America. That or the world. I really feel the whole world would act like that.
You might very well have a very good point. I don't know. I mean,
I don't think the government has anything to worry about. Like, we can handle it. I promise you. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just I really think it would just be nothing.
I think that they're doing it. I asked a government official one day. I said, do you anticipate any type of disclosure? And he said, come again? I said, disclosure, like disclosing what we know. And he goes, yeah, think of it as disclosure with a small d. So they let a little out, they'll leak a little more, test the water. How's everybody reacting? A little more comes out, you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's quite possibly what's happening now. Again, as I said earlier in the show, you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Sure.
It's coming out. There's going to be apparently a big statement coming at the end of this month, October.
Oh, wow.
Yep. There's going to be a fairly, I'm hearing some rumors circulate. Well, we know for a fact.
Like from the government?
Yes. The government's making a statement, the intelligence community, at the end of this month. That's happening. What they exactly say,
Wow.
I don't know, but apparently things are moving in the right direction. I talked to
Huh.
like my people within, that tell me, that keep me kind of, in the loop on things. So
Wow.
yeah, and so those things are happening. Obviously, I'm going to keep putting pressure on. I want answers. I want to know where that debris and the bodies from Varginha were taken. I want to know. I'm curious. I don't make these films just for entertainment. I mean, this is like I'm I'm just like a part of the citizenship. I'm Joe Public. I'm out there just trying to get answers, right? I really want to know what they know. And I feel like the more I learn, the more pissed off I kind of get. Like, hey, man, we're entitled to this information too. We pay taxes. Like, I don't think you should feel privileged to the point where you can't trust the general population with this information. We should be entitled to it. I go after this stuff because I want to know, and I share the results of my personal investigations with the rest of the world. I don't ever try to ram anything down someone's throat.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to don't believe me, because I wouldn't. What do I know? But listen to the witnesses. But you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
just
Sure.
listen to the witnesses. Like,
Yeah.
I get personally attacked sometimes, and I just say to myself, well, hang on a second. What am I saying? What statements am I making? I don't know what it is.
Correct.
I don't know where
Correct.
it's from. I don't know. I don't have those answers.
Yeah.
But there is incredibly compelling evidence that a UFO crashed in Varginha, Brazil in January of 1996, and that there were live creatures, beings, ET, whatever you want to call them, recovered. One alive, one dead. And it went to the United States. That's the evidence is suggesting that the Americans were involved, according to the witnesses, both military and civilian. It went to the United States. Where? I'd like to know, and I'm going to follow up on that. And I'm also going to continue following up with, photographic evidence, videotaped evidence. It's the holy grail. It's what we all want. It's what the government's sitting on. So,
Oh yeah. Or meeting
you know what I
him,
mean?
an interview, right? Like
Oh
that would
my,
be great. Can you
just
imagine lighting for that?
hold on. Put a little more on your black
Yeah.
eye right there. That eye is so big and dark. I got to lighten that up a little bit. Can we put a little rouge
Yeah,
on
mic check. Yeah, let's get a mic check. He's gonna need two mics. He's got two mouths. Okay, we got
How
look,
can we record telepathy?
yeah, yeah. How do we get that on camera? He's like, I got a special camera for that.
We have to
Got
put
you.
little, those little
Yeah.
blurb things that come,
That's funny. That is funny. Look, at the beginning of the interview, you started talking about I don't want to miss that before we leave.
Yes.
So I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but
no, yeah,
kind of bring it full circle here, which is the driver of
Yes.
the vehicle,
Oh my
right, that
gosh.
you went to see, right? Because you kind of just told that story, right? So this
Yeah.
totally brings it back full circle. The guy's
So-
there. You go say, yeah, I'm going to let you just take it. From
Yeah. So there's only one person alive that knows what happened exactly that night. And that's the driver of the car, Eric Lopes. Eric Lopes has been hiding for 26 years. I've had seasoned Brazilian UFO researchers say, don't even bother trying. It's never going to happen. Never. We've offered all the money in the, not going to happen. So I'm meeting with Marco Leal, my partner on the film, with the mayor of Varginha, Senor Verge Green. And to my astonishment, he basically says on camera that, he's an elected official, that this incident happened. He knew the witnesses, a lot of the witnesses, he'd heard all the stories. He offers his assistance. This is a sitting mayor, not retired. Okay. So I said, let's take him up on that. We want to find the driver, Eric Lopes. So they found him for us.
Wow.
The mayor did. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
They had his address. And it's funny, actually. I always listen to that little voice in my head. I always do, because it never fails me. And we met in the town square. And they said, well, we're going to take you out to his house, and then the rest is up to you. Okay. So they had a big black Mercedes, we were driving in a couple of these little van things with sliding side doors, all of the gear and all that stuff. We had two of those, a white and a gray one. And just as we were leaving, they were actually in the car, the Mercedes ahead of us. I jumped out of from behind the driver's seat, and I flagged him down. Said, hold on a sec, grabbed a translator. I said, would you mind walking up to the house with us? To the guy. I honestly think that saved my life. Wow. Because he had remembered Eric Lopes from grade school. He was now a famous, it was a lawyer and the son of the former chief police or something. The mayor made the arrangements. The mayor did not come. Okay, but the mayor made the arrangements.
He knew not to go.
Yeah, probably.
Hey, a little heads up would have been nice. But
yeah, so camera's rolling. We get out there. Honestly, in the back of my mind, I had very low expectations. I didn't think he was going to be home. It was the middle of the day. Nobody be able to reach this guy. The family of the guy who died is a really good friend of his too, Marco Schuiz. They couldn't get statements out of him about it. So I said to him, "Do you mind walking up with us?" And he did. We got to the house, and that's and the crazy thing is, before we had a chance to ask him anything, he came up to the window. He didn't come to the door. He was in a window on the second floor. The window was open. I don't even know if there was any way to close those windows. But anyway, he came up and he had his elbows kind of resting on the sill there, and he was looking down at us.
Yeah.
And the first thing out of his mouth was, if you're here to talk about the ET, he said he's not going to say anything. So at first he said that it was Eric Lopes' friend. I was trying to process because it was all going down really quickly, and my Portuguese is terrible. Sure. And it's all going very quickly, but I could feel the tension. Okay. And one thing that doesn't come across in that scene is I'm looking this guy in the eyes, and all I can think is, wow, I've never looked into anyone's eyes like this guy. He looked like he'd been harboring a secret for 26 years. I don't know how else to describe it. It was so intense. God, the weight of it all. I could just see it in his eyes and his face. Wow, I'll never forget it, man. I just looked at it. I'd never seen a face like that before.
Absolutely.
I wish I could find the words to describe it better to you, but I'm looking at his face and I thought, wow, this man is really seen something. He's been shouldering this on him, but he was saying in the window, everyone here is about to get shot. And I didn't really know. I was confused, and there, the lawyer who was friends with the mayor, who used to be a politician, he's looking at me, and at one point, and he's saying, "It's over, we got to go. It's over, we got to go." And I kept pushing the fact. I didn't realize, because none of the translators said to me, that he was threatening to shoot us 3 times. Bullets are going to start flying, is what he was saying.
He kept saying, in the translation in the thing, you can see that, but you can't. You don't know that
I didn't
in the
know.
moment. Exactly.
I didn't know that he was saying that, and nobody told me. But
that's what was crazy, because you kept pushing, and I'm thinking, dude, he's saying he's going to shoot you.
I didn't know that. And after the fact, when I found out that's what he was saying, I was like, why didn't anybody tell me that he was going to shoot me in the face? Seriously?
I was thinking, this guy's got cojones. That's all I was thinking. James, you got it, dude.
Look, I felt the intensity. Believe me, I felt that, but I had no idea he was saying we're about to get bullets are going to start flying.
Yeah.
But towards the end, and this doesn't really pick up on camera. The lawyer guy in the suit, he looked at me, and he went the look. Okay, he didn't speak English. But he looked at me like, we're getting the F out of here right now. And that's when I realized
it's over.
There's something really serious. The way he looked at me was, if you care about your life, we're leaving now. Like that.
If you want to finish this documentary, we leave now. Yeah, right.
It was very intense. And then I'm getting things translated. And we had the audio technician put headphones on, and he's listening very carefully, because the audio technician, this guy Guy in the field, he had his boom pole up. But he had his head kind of behind the edge of the building a little bit, because he could hear you're about to get shot, right? So he's sitting there listening to it. So he's kind of hiding behind the thing a little bit. The cameraman, David West, is trying to like zoom in on the face, but David is so paralyzed with fear because Dave knew something's going on. And so Dave, you know, he's never dropped the ball before, but he was like, he needed to zoom in better. But he was, because the guy was looking at Dave going like this the whole time, the cameraman like this. Yep. And so Dave was going, Jesus, this is really intense. And meanwhile, I'm trying to find out what's going on. I'm like, there were so many things going on in that scene, right? And I'm trying to figure out, is this Eric Lopes or not? Will someone please let me know? And I want to ask him just one question. No, he won't ask. I said, no, please let me ask. You know, I kept saying that. It was crazy. And then, of course, when we got back to the studio, we're doing the translations. That's when in fact, I called Fernanda, our field, you know, translator, you know, and she was also a production assistant. And I was a little angry with her. I said, Fernando, I can't believe you're the translator in the field and you never told me this guy was going to shoot me. Like, I think it's information I should have known, you know? Seriously.
Like
anyway,
right away.
The whole thing got spooky. And then we were going to go meet with these other witnesses. We just met with Military X. Or going to go meet with him after that. No, I think we just met with Military X, and we were about to meet another military guy from the as a military base, and that's when the phone calls started going out. So now I have Eric Lopes threatening to shoot. He's part of intelligence. He's upset that we went to his house with a camera. Believe me.
Was that a gun on the?
We don't know, but we've analyzed it to death. He's got one hand below the seal, and that hand remains there the whole time.
Bro, it looks like a gun.
That, believe me, that's what we all were thinking was he had it ready.
What else is it? I mean, let's be real. That's what I mean. Like, what else?
Well, he's a military intelligence. He's military intelligence guy. He's a trained, you know, he's
just looking by his house. He's got a gun to protect himself, right?
Of course he does.
That's right. Like, that totally makes sense.
Of course he does.
He threw out the threat of bullets.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, you guys were all
bullets are going to start flying anyway. So I got spooked.
Oh,
it was spooky. It was spooky because you have that, but on top of that, you're hearing that they're threatening their own military men are threatened according to them, and we tracked them down. I cannot imagine why they would make that up. They're terrified. We know that. We almost interviewed the former chief of police, and they said they were terrified. They were terrified for their safety, for their security. So that's people that are part of that organization, that are part of that military. Okay. So what do you think how they feel about me coming in there and poking around?
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's a reality.
Sure.
We are trying to expose, quite possibly, one of the biggest secrets in Brazilian history. Okay. So don't think for a moment that that's not on my mind. I realize that sometimes you get caught up like, hey, we're shooting a doc. This is great, but we're stepping on some big toes.
Sure.
They were threatened. I'm hearing from every witness I talk to that are all threatened. Every one of them is telling me this. They're terrified. So I have to think about my security. I mean, those things are weighing on you. They're in the back of your mind. I mean, I'm spooked right now to go back to Brazil. You know, I have a family. I have an 8-year-old son.
No, I got it.
So I don't know. I mean, once the film comes out, our profiles would be higher. And if anything happened to us at this point, I mean, it would be kind of obvious, right? So I don't think they would do that. But they could throw a kilo of coke in my bag, and then I'm locked up in jail in Brazil for the rest of my life.
Oh my gosh.
Going through customs.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean, are you scheduled to shoot there anytime soon to go back?
I was supposed to go back in January, but I'll go back. We'll see how this whole thing unravels. I have no idea how it's going to unfold. I don't know if the government's going to make a statement. You know, they had congressional hearings in Brazil recently on the topic of UFOs. There's one thing that I didn't share that I will share. And this is something that was a bit of an advantage that I had. In 2013, I'd been looking into this case for about 2 years at that point, 2013, 2014. Marco Leal, my co-producer, partner, gets an interview with a guy named Jose Carlos Pereira. He's a brigadier general Air Force. And he agrees to talk about UFOs in Brazil. It's on camera. He says, but don't talk about Varginha. If you talk about Varginha, this interview's over. Jesus. Okay. Really? He was serious. So we didn't. We promised him that we wouldn't. Otherwise, he wasn't going to go on camera.
Yeah.
This is 2013. I know I just said that. 2013, 2014 at the latest. At the end of it, cameras were off. I came up to Jose Carlos Pereira and I begged him and I promised him on my life that there were no cameras and no recording devices rolling. And I said, please. And Marco did too. Please, please, please tell us about Varginha. Please, we want to know. And he was getting in the back of his, he had a driver waiting for him and he was getting back in the car. I think he sat down in the seat and he looked at us and he said, it happened. And he closed the door and off he drove. Oh. And so I had that level of validation early on in production where I just simply can't imagine why he would lie to us. Sure. He wouldn't talk about it on camera. He didn't want to make any comments on it. We begged him. I'm not kidding you. When I tell you I was on my hands and knees begging, I was. And so was Marco. And we looked him in the eyes. We were begging him, please, just tell us so we know. The reason why I'm sharing this story now is he died a few years later. But I knew that. So I had that confirmation from a brigadier, Air Force, Brazilian, very high level, early on. And so that kind of was my driving force. That little moment kept us going, kept Marco and I going. That this case really did happen. Of course, we uncovered, it took years, but we uncovered more evidence on this case in the history of the case, unequivocally. It's going to rattle.
It's going to rattle what you put together. Oh yeah, what you put together is honestly magnificent. It starts with a bang, and you don't think it can. At least in my, it's like, how can this go like even crazier? And it just does. But in just such a compelling way. I really got to say, you really presented it in such a compelling way. Look, I got one more question for you, James.
Please.
Before you go, yes, congratulations on the film. I do have something that I just wanted to ask. Just while you were talking, it got me thinking. So I told you we were going to interview Lou Elizondo, right? So yes. I have a source that told me that Lou Elizondo is working in conjunction with this book coming out, also a top secret project. That's all he would say, right? I couldn't go further on it. I can't really say who it is at all. And then you told me about the government, this thing at the end of October. Do you think there's anything? Have you heard anything about this? Do you know anything about that? Am I?
Well, I just know that people like Lou and Mellon and so forth are diligently at it every day, pushing for government transparency. That I know, that they are putting the pressure on, keeping the pressure on. I mean, every time I text Lou, he's always off in Washington, D.C., or he's traveling, you know what I mean? And he's like, lots of things are happening. So there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. And I think that Lou has dedicated his life to getting this story out. I really believe that. And as is, Christopher Mellon and Gary Nolan's been doing a lot publicly lately too, which is great. I think the phenomenon, I was very proud of that piece. I think it really kind of opened doors a little bit and encouraged for more people to come forward. I think it made much more of an impact behind closed doors.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's
great.
That the climate has changed. It's okay to talk about this. This is no longer a career killer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Dude, it was the best UFO documentary I'd ever seen. And I got to say, after I saw this last one, dude, you're crushing it right now.
Oh.
Like, I mean that. Like, I can't even tell you how, because they can just be a little whatever sometimes. You watch them, I'm not into the, whatever. It can just get a little crazy.
I'm right there with you.
You just have such a way of presenting it that just adds a legitimacy to it. And your tenacity, I'll use that word again, your tenacity in the making these really adds to it, man. You're just never willing to let things go. You want to go right over that hill to get the next piece of evidence, right? One more question, one last thing. You keep pushing. Just thank you from the rest of us out here watching, and just thank you so much for everything. You and your crew. I know you have a lot of people, that are helping you and working.
Yep.
So big thanks to them as well
you.
for everything y'all are doing. And yeah, man, just what a great film. And I really super enjoyed this conversation, man. I could talk to you for hours about this. I
me
love
too.
this stuff. I really do. I love this stuff. It's so fascinating to me. Really is.
I'm going to keep pushing and fighting, and I appreciate all the support out there. I really do. Don't think for a moment it doesn't go unnoticed, or it goes unnoticed, because it doesn't.
You got Texas right here behind you.
I couldn't do it without you guys. I just couldn't. And you guys just know that I'm out there with my team fighting like hell to get the truth out.
That's awesome, man. No, again, from Texas, we appreciate it, and thank you. Keep the fight going. And this was awesome. I mean that. This was so fascinating. Thank you guys so much.
It was fun, man. Thanks for having me on. Seriously.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to the Lone Star Plate podcast with your host, Patrick Scott Armstrong. For more info, go to lonestarplate.show.